Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
Everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save pay an average of $699 less per year. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Had a good game. Had a couple of good games last night, Monday Night Football. That's one thing I want to get into. I'll get into the Jets and the Giants and the Rams and the Chargers and obviously several other teams of what I saw from the NFL Sunday and Monday. But when I think about last night's game, a couple of games, by the way, I was pretty surprised and happy at what I saw. I didn't expect Houston. I did not expect the Houston Texans to be as competitive as they were. I really, really didn't. This kid, Deshaun Watson, just continues to amaze me. I mean, when you think about the fact last night was his 9th regular season loss of his career, okay, in his 3 years in the National Football League. This is a guy that the average margin of losses in those games was 4 points. 4 points. This is what Deshaun Watson does. This is what he's all about. He was a winner at Clemson. And I can't deny that he's a winner in Houston. They may not win a championship, but damn it, it ain't his fault. Because time and time again, when pressed against the wall and asked to rise to the occasion and respond, Deshaun Watson does exactly that. Last night, when all was said and done, he finished 20 of 30, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, was sacked 6 times. Finished with a 114.3 passer rating. Completed about 66% of his passes. Now, obviously, he wasn't Drew Brees because how many people are Drew Brees? 32 of 43, 370 yards. Drew Brees stepped back in the pocket, and based on the pass rush that the Houston Texans didn't have, couldn't touch the quarterback. Dropped back in the pocket, called the wife and kids, told him when he'd be home, asked for what he'd want for dinner and whatever. I mean, he was doing everything. I mean, talk about being in a comfort zone. But this is the kind of stuff that Drew Brees had at his disposal last night. I didn't expect much from the Houston Texans because, quite frankly, I didn't look at them as that great of a team. I know they're good. Deshaun Watson is a baller. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the top 3 receivers in the world as far as I'm concerned. Man doesn't drop passes. Didn't drop a single pass last year. Didn't drop a single pass. And had about 115 receptions. Didn't drop a single pass. This dude is something special. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I just say to myself, look, man, you can't ignore what you get from Houston. You got to be surprised because Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson are your dual threat at the running back spot, particularly now that Lamar Miller is out for the year. You know, he got injured. And so because he had injured and you had to go out there and make a deal and have a running back by committee, these guys play well. I mean, Carlos Hyde had 83 yards on 10 rushes and had a 20-yard run. Duke Johnson rushed for 57 yards on 9 carries, had a 32-yard run. You got to give credit where credit is due. Offensively, behind, what do? Deshaun Watson, less than a minute left, connects with DeAndre Hopkins. Then after that, connects with newly acquired wide receiver Kenny Stills from the Miami Dolphins. They take a 28-27 lead. Oh, by the way, the damn kicker missed the extra point. But a roughing the kicker penalty was implemented. They got a second crack at it. They made the extra point. They go up 28-27. They give Drew Brees the football with about 37 seconds left. You need 35 yards. 35 yards to be in position to kick a field goal. What does Drew Brees get in 3 completions? 35 yards. It's what he does. He's Drew Brees. So when you look at it from that perspective, whether it's Michael Thomas, it was Ted Ginn Jr., it didn't matter. Drew Brees going to find whoever he needed to find. That's what he does. It would have been nice to see Houston's defense be able to do something. If you remember, last regular season in Philadelphia, Deshaun Watson leads another comeback, and all you need is this defense to get a stop, and you preserve the victory, and that is that. They couldn't stop it. They lost that game to the Philadelphia Eagles after Deshaun Watson brought him back. Last night, same thing. Instead of being against Nick Foles, who was with the Eagles at the time, this time it's against Drew Brees. You get the lead, and your defense can't hold. And I got to tell you something right now. I'm not a person that usually looks at somebody like the defensive coordinator and point fingers. I'm thinking everything starts with the head man. That's how I'm looking at it. That's exactly how I'm looking at it. But I got to tell you something right now. Romeo Crennel is the defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. The man is 72 years old. We all know he wasn't a great head coach in his 6 complete years in Cleveland and Kansas City. As a head coach, he was 28-55. That's a 33% winning percentage. That ain't cutting it. But religiously, he has been ballyhooed and recognized at the very least as a damn good coordinator. I got to tell you something. Starting to wonder. You're in Houston, okay? You are in Houston. You've been a defensive coordinator for quite some time. He was a defensive coordinator in Cleveland in 2000. I'm looking at his resume right here. He was a defensive coordinator in New England, 2001 through 2004. We know he won a couple of Super Bowls there, okay? You go back to being a defensive coordinator in Kansas City before you were the head coach. Then you went back to being a defensive coordinator. And you stayed there until arriving in Houston in 2014. And now you've been in Houston the last 5 years. Romeo Crennel has been around too long. You need a stop. I know it's Drew Brees that you're going against. You got to figure that out. You got to figure it out. That didn't happen, and as a result, Houston lost. I got New Orleans going to the Super Bowl before the season even began, coming out of the NFC. It's not going to be easy, but I'm not betting against Brees in New Orleans. I'm just not. Not this time. Not 2 years in a row. I don't see that. As for Houston, I will admit this. Deshaun Watson does give you cause to pause. The brother's sensational. He can run with the football. He can pass with the football. He was being examined by doctors throughout the evening because of his back ailments, because he was getting popped silly. Got sacked 6 times. Got hit 11 times. New Orleans was all over him. No question about it. All true. But I got to tell you something. Despite the fact that they were all over him, he kept coming, man. He kept coming. Deshaun Watson got a lot of heart, obviously tremendous skill. And if I'm the Chicago Bears, I'm sick to my stomach. I not only passed on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, I actually moved up in the draft to get Mitchell Trubisky. I don't understand that one. I got to admit it. I really, really do. Deshaun Watson is something special. They got a quarterback in Houston, man. He's only 24 years of age. They got a quarterback in Houston, no doubt about it. And they got some talent, too. I can't underestimate them. But it appears losing Jadeveon Clowney and ultimately trading him to Seattle is not a plus. J.J. Watt, talk about a no-show last night. Where the hell was he? No sacks, no tackles, no assists. I'm just looking. I don't see anything. I watched some of the game. Didn't see anything. I am wondering. Somebody's got to say it. I mean, it was an ofro. When is the last time you seen that with J.J. Watt? Humanitarian extraordinaire, former multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. We know how big time he is. I ain't used to seeing that from J.J. Watt. I'm not used to seeing T.J. Watt be more recognizable than his big brother J.J. I'm not used to that. So there's a lot of things to address today. No question about it. But I will tell you this. It's one game. Houston should be excited. They really, really should. Because Deshaun Watson and his history and his talent and his heart all show losing ain't going to be a continuous thing as long as he's behind center. I'm telling you that right now. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. That was just the first game that I wanted to get into. The second game, you could sit up there and easily say that the story of this game was Derek Carr. When you look at Derek Carr, you recognize the fact that this is a guy who nobody questions the talent. Nobody questions the arm strength, the accuracy. I mean, you know what he can do. He can fling that football now. The question that you had about Derek Carr was whether or not he could be consistent. That's still a question mark. Because last night's game against Denver, it's just one game. But here is where it absolutely positively gets interesting. He was sensational last night. 22 or 26. That's an 84.6% completion percentage. Just 259 yards, a touchdown, not a single interception. A quarterback rating of 121. Had a running back in Josh Jacobs, a rookie out of Alabama. Ran for 85 yards on 23 carries, had 2 touchdowns. You look at Tyrell Williams, the guy that was supposed to be playing opposite Antonio Brown, and they were supposed to be a dual threat, but now that Antonio Brown supposedly messed things up for the Oakland Raiders, it's Tyrell Williams' show. He showed up and showed out. 6 receptions for 105 yards. Tight end, Darryl Waller, his checkered pass. Some battles that he's had. Hell of a football player. He's just starting tight end. 7 receptions, 70 yards. Got to give credit where credit is due. He was getting open against Denver's defense. Here's the thing. For me, I watched Denver, and I got to tell you something. I expected better. And at some point in time, I got to start looking at John Elway. Now, I can't blame it all on Joe Flacco, especially after Deshaun Hamilton dropped that touchdown pass, hit him right in his chest. You down 14-6, you catch that pass, you go to 2-point conversion, score time. I get all of that. But I'm just looking at Joe Flacco, 21 for 31, 268 yards, a touchdown, no interception, sacked 3 times. Not a bad performance. Just wasn't Derek Carr's. And then I'm looking at them. Philip Lindsay can play, he all right, but he ain't going to knock his socks off. I mean, he doesn't move me. Royce Freeman, yeah, he all right. Yeah, all right. This kid, Cortland Sutton, really seemed to develop a rapport with Flacco. Flacco was getting him the ball, 7 receptions for 120 yards. Of course, Emmanuel Sanders had 5 receptions for 86 yards. We all know he can ball. But when you look at Denver, there's just nothing that really, really moves you. Offensively, they're an average ball club. They'll be okay. Defensively is where you expect big things from them. You got Vic Fangio coaching that team now. This is the man that was the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears last year, led by Khalil Mack. We all know what he brings to the table. And when you look at Denver, you led by Von Miller on defense. You got Shelby Harris and Chris Harris out there. Bradley Chubb, you just drafted him high in the first round over a year ago. Derek Wolfe can play. Kareem Jackson is there. You just look at them and you just say, wait a minute here. I expected this defense to be better. Why are the Oakland Raiders, of all people, fresh off this Antonio Brown fiasco, why is Oakland converting 7 of 8 third downs in the first half en route to their 2 first scores? How's that happening? Riding the momentum of the crowd? I get it. But I just still found myself expecting more from the Denver Broncos. And the fact that we didn't get more, maybe the time has arrived where we need to start talking about the Denver Broncos just a little bit more, because guess what? You won the Super Bowl in 2015 when Von Miller and those boys terrorized Cam Newton in the Super Bowl. Since that time, you haven't even made the playoffs. 3 straight years. They've come and gone. They've missed the playoffs. This is what John, and 3 straight years you've had trouble finding your quarterback. Drafted Paxton Lynch, had Case Keenum. You know? Those ain't the only ones. They're just the ones that come to my mind at this particular moment in time. I'm just saying. When you look at the history of quarterbacks for the Denver Broncos, I got to admit, I expected more. I really, really did. I really expected the Denver Broncos defense to be a bit better than what it was. I can't deny it. They got Trevor Siemian, Case Keenum, Joe Flacco. I mean, I can't believe I'm clamoring for the days of Tim Tebow, for crying out loud. Denver's just not going to be that good. To me, last night, as impressed as I was with Oakland, I viewed the game as a battle of for last place in the AFC West. Because I don't see any of these teams being ahead of Kansas City or the Los Angeles Chargers. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Chargers found a way, make noise when the game you sit up there, even without Melvin Gordon. Phillip Rivers is still there. Kansas City is no joke, even without Tyreek Hill. Still got Travis Kelce. Still got Sammy Watkins. Still got Damian Williams. And now you got Shady McCoy there too, who looked fresh and young and spry. Just ecstatic to be back with Andy Reid. Why should I expect anything from the Raiders or the Broncos? I just expected the Broncos defense to look a little better. I expected their offense to be trash and their defense to be a lot better. Offense is slightly better than that. Defense was considerably worse. So all of these things are things that we have to look at, particularly as today's show progresses. 888-SAY-ESPN, that's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. A couple more things I want to get into. Now that I've had an additional day to reflect on the whole Antonio Brown fiasco. By the way, somebody informed me he blocked me on Instagram. I don't know what would make him think I would care about it. I don't give a damn whether I'm blocked on Instagram or not. Not like I tried to Instagram him directly. You know, I post stuff on my social media pages, but that's about it. Ain't nobody thinking about trying to post something on his page. But nevertheless, what I would tell you is this. Now that I've had an opportunity to reflect on it, ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you all a simple question. When you think about this season, this 2019 NFL season, particularly with the New England Patriots having acquired Antonio Brown, my simple question to all of you is, how do you feel about it as it pertains to parity in the National Football League? See, when Kevin Durant went to Golden State, people were in an uproar. Me too. I was the main one. I didn't even want to watch basketball that season because the balance of power had so dramatically shifted, it made no sense. Nobody was going to beat Golden State that year. Nobody. You had to literally wait for an injury to them because nothing else was going to knock them off. Well, a few years before that, Miami had LeBron and D. Wade and those boys. I didn't view that as the same. Even though that was kind of stacking the deck, there was still Boston there with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Rondo. Indiana was on a come up. And more importantly than anything else, LeBron, D. Wade, and Bosh had never played together. So to me, it was not the same as Kevin Durant already joining a juggernaut who were experienced in playing with one another. They just didn't have him. LeBron, D. Wade, and Bosh had to learn to play together, which explained why they lost to Dallas that first go-round when Dirk Nowitzki went ballistic on them. And somehow, some way, LeBron James imploded, and even Jason Terry was guarding him. Kevin Durant in the Golden State was different. But I remember everybody, myself included, being in an absolute uproar. My question is, how do we feel about that with the NFL? Because let me tell you something right now. Barring injury, there's nobody that's beating the New England Patriots. Y'all do understand that, right? There's nothing to talk about here. There's nobody that's beating the New England Patriots. I mean, there's just too much firepower. It's damn near unfair. And I remember when they were playing, see, the only thing, do you realize that right now, the only thing we have to hold on to hope for a competitive, parity-laden season are the New York Giants? Now, for those of you who think that that statement means I must be on crack, please understand I'm talking about the New York Giants from 2007, 2011. I'm not talking about these Giants. I'm saying the 2007 Giants, the 2011 Giants. But even that, we found ourselves hoping against hope that they would do something none of us believed they could do. But Michael Strahan and the crew thought they could get to Brady. And if they could get to Brady, they could change everything. And believe it or not, barring injury, that's all you can hope for. That's all you can hope for. And I thought about it because I said even that ain't good enough because I thought about Chicago doesn't need to blitz to get to the quarterback, but their offense is not good enough. But then I thought about how, well, Eli Manning, Mario Manningham, Plexico Burress, whomever, their offense wasn't a juggernaut either. So maybe there is a chance. I just can't see it. I can't see Brady with Belichick having Antonio Brown with a healthy Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman. I just can't see how you're going to beat New England. James White, Sony Michel, I mean, what the hell? I don't see how. I don't see. Is it not? If we're going to talk about Antonio Brown, I guess my question to everybody would be, is it time to start talking about the New England Patriots in a fashion that asks the question, are they going undefeated this season? Are they going to pull it off? Because anybody could be beaten on any given Sunday. I'm just saying that, theoretically speaking, it's a foregone conclusion. I don't see how anybody can beat these guys. I really don't. 888-SAY-ESPN, it's 888-729-3776. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less, only at Walmart. By the way, do you have frequent heartburn? Like the kind where you have an acid stashed everywhere in case it pops up? You know what I mean. You keep some in your bag or your desk or your car or your nightstand. You have those chalky tablets ready for whenever and wherever heartburn strikes. Well, listen up. There's an easier way to deal with your heartburn. That's Prilosec OTC. Just one pill a day will last a full 24 hours with zero heartburn. So kick your antacid habit. It's possible with Prilosec OTC. Use as directed for 14 days to treat frequent heartburn, not for immediate relief. Understand, I'm in the media business. I've been a reporter for 25 years. I was a columnist for several years. I've been a sports commentator and a pundit since pretty much 1999, but for ESPN since 2003. I'm in the business of communicating. I'm in the business of talking to people, not just talking about them. Matter of fact, I've made a career of it. I don't care if I ever speak to Antonio Brown again in life. This kind of behavior on the part of him was so disgraceful, so embarrassing, so irresponsible, so selfish. It's hard for me to put into words. And from the principled position of knowing how to conduct yourself. We all make mistakes. Nobody's flawless. Nobody's perfect. But it's rare in a day where you see somebody intentionally engage in this level of insubordination, of distrust, and beyond. He has taped phone calls secretly. He has revealed private messages of teammates. He has stood up bosses. He's threatened bosses. He's done so many things that are nothing short of reprehensible and egregious. I don't understand how anybody can defend this. And as a black man, let me be very, very clear. While nobody should get away with it and most wouldn't, when it comes to you being black and in America, it's not just about doing twice as much to get half. It's also about paying twice the price for half the egregious behaviors of others. We don't get chances like others do. And so I look at it and I'm sitting there because you're going to have some ignorant fools out there that use words like sellout. Y'all call up here today. Y'all thought I hung up on people in the past. Try me today.
The execution, the intensity. This game feels very different than a lot of the football we've been watching over recent days.
We don't fear anybody. No man, no team, no situation.
Drives it.
Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
If you missed any of my opening segment, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith Podcast, brought to you by the Capital One Quicksilver Card, earning unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere. Hey, what's in your wallet? Also, the Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by new Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. Now with 4 levels of defense against gunk, wear, corrosion, and friction. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. It's 32 minutes past hour number 1. Back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, and of course, ESPN News. I'm having number calling up my numbers here, for crying out loud, on my computer. I got it. Let's go to Dave. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Dave?
How you doing, my friend?
Dave, are you there? All
yes.
right, go ahead.
How you doing?
What's up?
How you doing, my friend?
I'm all right. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to talk about the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson. I agree with you 100% that Romeo Crennel was way past his prime, and he blew the coverage in the end of that game. And it's just, I think him and Bill O'Brien both.
I didn't say he was all that. I didn't say he was past his prime. I'm just saying he's 72 years old, and the job that he's done last night and at the end of the season last year wasn't that great. We need to keep our eyes on it. That's all I'm saying.
Right. But you are right though about Deshaun Watson. He is a star in the making, and if he had an offensive line like the Cowboys, the Eagles, or the Ravens, this guy would take those teams to the Super Bowl because he is so talented, and they really need to shore up their offensive line. But you're right, he is a star in the making, and like I said, I'm a big fan of his. I saw him at Clemson, and I just knew he was going to ball out. And the last thing I wanted to say is,
I'm going to put that on though. Hold on. You know who I'm going to put on that? I'm going to put that on Bill O'Brien. You know why? Bill O'Brien is not only a head coach, but he's a former offensive coordinator. He's worked with quarterbacks like Tom Brady before. You got to know what this Fred. You know how hard it was for Houston to find a quarterback for years? You know how hard? How many times they had to rely on Matt Sharp for crying out loud? You know how hard it was? You got a guy like this, a stud like this. The priority has to be to protect him. It has to be. Now, in fairness to them, you did move Tunsil over there. I get all that. But you got to protect this dude. You got to protect the dude. You protect his blind side, but you got to protect him, period. He can't get hit 11 times in the opener of the damn season. That just can't happen.
Let me ask you one final question before I get off here. What would you think about this? And I know this is kind of a little bit crazy, but I want you to consider this. He's such a valuable quarterback that's going to give you 10, 12 years if you protect him. Would it be worth even entertaining to go on to make a trade for Hopkins, who is a ball star, but you can get receivers anywhere to shore up that offensive line? Because if you protect him for 10, 12 years.
Hold it. Did you just call up to my show and propose trading Deshaun Watson? Is that what you just did?
No, Hopkins.
I'm sorry, I said DeAndre Hopkins. You said to trade DeAndre Hopkins.
Listen, I don't want to give him up, but if we shore up that offensive line, we're good for 12 years. You can find receivers anywhere, not at Hopkins' level.
Hold it. You can find receivers like there's something close to DeAndre Hopkins?
Not close, but I'm saying if you don't protect Watson, then what good is Hopkins going to be? He's going to be just sitting there.
You got to find
whatever.
You got to listen. You can't give up a DeAndre Hopkins, 27-year-old wide receiver, one of the top 5 receivers in all of football. They don't come around every day. You can't do that. You got to find a different way because guess what? You can protect the quarterback all you want to. He going to still be getting hit if he got to hold on to the ball forever because he can't find nobody open. Hell no. That's a bad suggestion. Have a nice day. Bye. Talk to me tomorrow. I don't want to hear that. No. They traded DeAndre Hopkins. You crazy. CB, you live with Stephen A. Talk to me. What's up?
Oh, man, hallelujah. With the culmination of the NFL.
Oh, stop right there, CB. No rapping. Get to your point. This ain't no damn rap session. Don't try it. I'll hang up on you. Get right to it. Go ahead.
Okay. With the culmination of the NFL weekend, I thought it was beautiful. It was nice. And you hit the nail on the head talking about the Patriots and Tom Terrific. But I'm a Raider fan, and I was so happy, Stephen A. Hallelujah. Because with the departure of Antonio Brown, AB, I thought it was going to be cataclysmic for us. Now, you know how you say the Raiders have had a black cat walking around in the locker room. Hell, after AB left, I thought they were going to have a Black Panther walking around the locker room. But they showed up. They were respectful last night, and I was really proud. Derek, Carr, he did a good job. Yeah. He did a good job, and I really wasn't sold on Derek Carr, but I like Derek Carr. But he did a respectful job, no interceptions. He managed the game well, and our defense looked pretty stout. They were getting in on Flacco, so I was really happy for that. Now, the game before that, dealing with Drew Brees, my goodness, what a game that was. Oh, man, that came down to the wire. So I enjoyed the NFL weekend, especially with the culmination of my mighty Raiders winning.
Well, we'll see hold on, CB. You call back anytime, man. Call back next week. Let's see what the Raiders do next week and the week after that. That's one game. Thank you. They didn't start the season 0-3 like they did last time, but let's see what they do. We'll find out. Appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. Let's go to Michael. You're live with Stephen A. What's going on, Michael? How are you?
Oh, man, Steve, I'm so happy to be on your show, dude. Thank you so much for your time. I'll answer your question first on are people exhausted with the AB trade now that the Patriots have another added. And I say this, here's a point I don't think anybody thinks of. The Patriots have dominated in so many different ways without weapons, with injuries, with plagued with, you name it, they've dealt with it, and still they come up with that big fat W. And I'm a Niners fan. I love my red and gold, but I'll tell you this. I'm not only am I super excited about seeing AB there, it's more because of now I get to see them with such an amazing offensive weapon that Tom Brady, I don't think he's seen in quite some time. It's kind of like, well,
he hasn't seen it since Randy Moss, but what I'm saying is, you're happy about that?
I'm happy to see, because I don't, in this regard, I don't think we're ever going to see a dynamic duo of coach and quarterback that are so in tune with each other, in tune with the game, and they are chess experts at making the other coaching staff with Tom Brady out there, practically a coach himself, it's like I'm just like excited. Like, well, dang, let's just see what this is, because I don't think I'm ever going to see anything like this again in the NFL.
I will tell you this. I will tell you this. Too many people talk about Spygate, Deflategate, all of this other stuff, and they try to sit up there and talk about Bill Belichick and the Patriots cheating. You know what? At some point in time, you just got to concede. The man is just better than everybody else. Because you know who I never hear complaining about Bill Belichick? The players. No. I don't hear the players. I've never heard one NFL player deny his genius as a football coach. Ever. I've never heard that.
I think that commercial with Tom Brady and all the rest of the stars at the beginning of the Super Bowl last year when he says, here, hold all these rings. I think that states everything right there. But back to one of the things I wanted to ask you on the Miami Dolphins with that trade rumor with all the players coming off. I'm just curious why nobody's talking about, hey, players on Miami Dolphins. Okay, let's say they are tanking. Why not use this as an opportunity to go out there and just blow your position out of the water as an individual and possibly earn yourself onto a team that really does perhaps care about winning? I don't know what Miami's doing, but I'm just like wondering why that message.
Stop. Why are we acting like we don't know what the Miami Dolphins are doing? The Miami Dolphins are trying to rebuild. They have made the playoffs 1 year since 2009. They know they stink. What do they do? Now, if they've made moves that were bad and incompetent, I got what people are saying. But they got first-round picks. They've got second-round picks. They're clearly trying to build for the future. Why are players acting like they've never been a part of something like this before? That is just factually false. There's plenty of teams each year that are building and trying to retool to get themselves competitive down the line. The Dolphins are clearly one of those teams. What's the problem?
Well, irregardless, I'll tell you this, and this is my last thought. I loved this week. I was so happy to watch football again. I'm back in it. Super excited about my Niners. I liked what I saw. But I'll tell you what, if I was a Miami cornerback, I'd probably call in sick this coming week. I wouldn't even go.
All right. Appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Well, you're just showing you're not a competitor. That's all. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, back with your calls and more in a minute before hour number 2 jump starts with the great one himself, the mouth of the South, Paul Finebaum. By the way, have you ever had to miss a football game because you couldn't watch the game? That never has to happen again with TuneIn, your all-in-one audio app for live sports, news, music, and podcasts. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to live and on-demand coverage of every single game of the NFL season, including every NFL on ESPN Radio matchup. And that's just the beginning. TuneIn also gives you access to every MLB, NBA, and NHL game, not to mention college football, local and national sports radio, and sports podcasts on ESPN Radio, like yours truly, The Stephen A. Smith Show. The videographer for Antonio Brown, the guy that's been filming and taping all of the shenanigans, including Antonio Brown running around, waving his arms like he's free, because he got away from the Oakland Raiders, acting like it was a news flash or whatever. What's the guy's name again, John? What's the name again? Alejandro Narciso. I believe that's his name. Apparently, Antonio Brown didn't violate any laws because apparently, according to Alejandro Narciso, he got consent from John Gruden. Listen to Alejandro talking to Dan Le Batard.
The way that happened was I was shooting him all day, just documenting everything because eventually, it'd be cool to use it in like a longer form piece. And he was talking to Drew Rosenhaus, and then suddenly he goes, "Oh, Gruden's on the line." So I wasn't really thinking at that point of anything, and I wasn't gonna be like, "Hey, tell him that you're recording, by the way," So we recorded it, and then I put it in the video. And then while we were doing it, AB's marketing manager calls him and he says, "Hey, do you guys know that that's illegal to post that without telling him first?" And I was like, "Damn, he's right." So I was in the process of taking all the Gruden stuff out, and then I told AB, we told him, hey, just send the video to Gruden and then see what he thinks, because, we can get consent that way. So my whole thing the entire time when we were waiting for Gruden's response was that Gruden's going to be like, listen, AB, I love you, man, but, that's disrespectful. I can't be having you
Gruden gave permission?
I can't be having you post, our own conversations, which is the response that I think anyone would think was going to happen. And then he responds 15 minutes later, 3 texts. He goes, wow, I love it. Loved it. I love it. And I was like, what?
What?
And then we were like, all right, there's our consent. Keep the text message.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
This podcast hosted by Ivan Mizell, commemorating the 150th anniversary of college football. Download, subscribe, and review Down and Distance. Available wherever you enjoy your podcast. Back to the phones we go. Reggie, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, what's up,
Reggie,
Stephen A,
are you
man?
there?
I got a question.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So, I'm a big Bears fan, man. So, just like my Bears did in 06, made it to the Super Bowl just off of defense, I know our offense is suspect. Do you think this year's defense could do the same thing for Chicago?
I think the Bears' defense could get them there. I don't think it could win you a Super Bowl, but I think it could get you to it. I think you got to get more production and consistency from Mitchell Trubisky. And I also think that they got to get him some better weapons because he doesn't have them right now. Appreciate the call, man. Clarence, you're live with Stephen A. What's up? Clarence.
Hello?
Yeah, man, you better speak up right now, man. Stop talking to your friends and people. Pay attention. You on the air. What's up?
I hear you, Mr. Steve. How you doing today?
Hurry up. How you doing? We only got a minute. Go ahead. Say your point. Goodbye, man. Let's go to Brian. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Brian?
Hey, Stephen A. I wanted to ask you, been a long-time Raider fan, how is it a 4-12 team in the
I hear you, Mr. Steve. How you doing today?
Hurry up. How you doing? We only got a minute. Go ahead. Say your point. Goodbye, man. Let's go to Brian. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Brian? And the Jets. Whereas Oakland, they've got Denver, Kansas City, and the Chargers. So automatically your schedule's tougher because you got 6 games right there. Goodbye. You know what? Y'all better start being ready when you call up to the show. I don't know, brothers, you know, what you doing? One dude felt like he was puffing and passing before he was ready to speak.
This is SportsCenter right now. I'm Antonita Collins.
Coast. The Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
Airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250-plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio. Simulcast over the live national television airways of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-37... 7-6. A reminder that Golick and Wingo will be live from Maryland this Friday covering the Cowboys-Redskins matchup, part of ESPN Radio's Fall Football Tour, brought to you by Marathon. Get 5 cents off every gallon every day with Make It Count rewards from Marathon. To sign up, visit makeitcount.com or download the free app. On the line with us right now, my honor and privilege to have my next guest. Some call him the mouth of the South. Obviously, a foremost authority in the world of college football. I say a foremost authority in the world of football, period. Has his own radio show as well. You can hear him right here, the great one himself, the one and only Paul Finebaum. How are you, buddy? How's everything?
Stephen A., I am great. It's great to be on with you again.
Thank you, man. Listen, I want to start off the show today with you, the interview with you, on a high note for me. I must confess. I have to confess. It's a high note for me, Paul Finebaum, and that's Chip Kelly at UCLA. I don't mean to laugh too flagrantly about it, but I mean an 0-2 start, blaming his team for practices or whatever. You know college football. What the hell is going on with Chip Kelly at UCLA? It seems like he might not last the season, for crying out loud.
No, I mean, I still want to believe that he knows what he's doing. I said that to a friend of ours today, and she quickly corrected me with his record going back to his last year at the Eagles, the 49ers, and this. And Stephen A., you know it's something like 9-29, and it's abysmal.
His team for practices or whatever. You know college football. What the hell is going on with Chip Kelly at UCLA? It seems like he might not last the season. And then running their mouth prior to the game. Obviously, Clemson shut that down. Won the victory 24-10. It wasn't as awful as I thought it potentially would be. Jimbo Fisher appears to have them in the right direction. But I first wanted to know, what did you think about the game? And secondly, what do you think about the job that Jimbo Fisher's doing at Texas A&M right now?
Yeah, I thought Clemson played really well. And by the way, for those who didn't see the game, A&M scored with about 3 seconds to go just to make it semi-respectable. It was never going to be what we saw last year. That was ridiculous to think that A&M could hang with them in Clemson. Clemson's exactly who we thought they were. A lot of us were concerned maybe with all those guys going to the NFL, especially on the defensive line, they would take a slight step backwards. No. But the one thing about Clemson I will point out before I get to Jimbo, we're just not going to know for a very long time. Stephen, I thought this week, last week and this week when they go to Syracuse, were going to be the defining moments of the season. But after what happened to Syracuse, thank goodness you didn't speak to this team this year. I mean, they look terrible at Maryland. And, yeah, I think this game might be interesting for a while. It's going to be a big scene. Clemson's probably a little hungover, but this will not be much of a test. And they don't really have anyone left. I mean, they're on easy street until they get to the playoffs. As far as A&M, I was really disappointed in Kellen Mond, the quarterback. He struggled for a guy that's been around a long time. But I think A&M will have a respectable season. Now, with their schedule, they have the top 3 teams in the country on the schedule. So those are 3 losses. They've already lost one of those, Alabama and Georgia later. They're going to have to fight hard to go 8-4. And even then, it may not be that simple. So I think a lot of progress is being made, but it probably won't show up until next year in the final record.
Well, if it doesn't show up till next year, obviously, if I recall correctly, Jimbo Fisher got signed to about a 10-year, $75 million deal, if I remember correctly. Obviously, we look at it from that perspective, and there were some expectations. And I've actually been at the Texas A&M facilities. I did the show from there on one occasion. It's an absolutely fabulous campus, absolutely fabulous facility. I look at it from that perspective, and I say there's no excuse to be second or third fiddle on a consistent basis to even the Alabamas or the Georgias when you've got a Jimbo Fisher as your coach. You should be right there competing with them. Am I being a bit premature with that? Am I unfair with it? What's the deal?
No, you're not. And right now, you could argue they're no better than the 4th best team in the SEC West. When you pay that kind of bread, Stephen A., you better be in the top 3 or 4 in the country. Forget a division in a great conference. So he's got pressure. He's recruiting well. I think I'm not a patient guy when it comes to coaches who are making nearly $10 million a year. But I think if he can survive this season with a reasonable record, 8 maybe 9 wins with a postseason, next year is going to be critical because you can't be alibiing 3 years into it. Kevin Sumlin got run after 5.
Getting back to what you alluded to about Clemson, what can we do, or is there anything that could or should be done about a reigning defending national champion having this kind of schedule? When we're week 2, I mean, they're 2 games into the season, for crying out loud, and you're telling me it's a cakewalk to the postseason. I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I'm like, my goodness, is from a scheduling standpoint, shouldn't there be better games when you're talking about some of the elite programs in the nation?
Well, let me defend them on one regard, Stephen. They're playing two big-time SEC schools in A&M and South Carolina. You can laugh about where they are in the SEC, okay, but we're not talking about the Citadel here. We're talking about A&M, which was a top 12, top 13 team in South Carolina, which is really nowhere right now. But the issue is the ACC. It's become a very inferior league. And they're also fortunate. Notre Dame plays 5 ACC games. They're not part of that rotation, although it wouldn't have made any difference. We saw that in the playoff last year. Florida State is a dumpster fire. That used to be their toughest game of the year. Miami is 0 for the season right now. Virginia looks pretty good. Virginia Tech looks pretty bad. So there's nowhere to go, and they'll probably play Virginia in the ACC title game. That's nothing. Stephen A., I agree with you, but there's almost nothing that can be done right now because, in fairness to Dabo Swinney, he's playing legitimate teams non-conference.
The great Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Before I get back into some of these other teams, I wanted to stop at Oregon just for a second. I saw them drop 77 on Nevada. Obviously, Justin Herbert, a lot is being made about him and his potential of being a top quarterback taken in the upcoming draft, or at least second to Tua. What are your thoughts about him, what you've seen from him, and what you need to see from him as the season progresses?
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more from him against Auburn versus Nevada. But I really felt like Mario Cristobal, the coach, blew that game. I mean, they had the game in hand. He just could not pull the trigger on finishing Auburn off, and I realize that was last week's story, but that will haunt them for a very long time. I think Oregon is clearly the best team in the Pac-12. Stanford has just really fallen apart, as you saw last week against SC. SC, I think, is good. Maybe not great, but they're good. And I think right now Oregon is in trouble in terms of getting into the playoff, even if they run the table. And Herbert, I've gone back and forth. I think I was with you a week or two ago, and I thought maybe he would go ahead of Tua. I'm backing off that right now, even though we haven't seen a lot of Tua. But I mean, he is certainly in contention right now. Of course, if he looks at the NFL and thinks maybe I should just have a bad senior season so I don't have to go to Miami.
Michigan, overtime to beat Army. Overtime to beat Army. I mean, I know they're 2-0, but I'm worried about Jim Harbaugh right now because clearly I don't see an appearance in the college football playoff. And I anticipate, based on what I'm seeing from what Ryan Day is doing in Ohio State, seemingly picking up right where Urban Meyer left off, I don't see Michigan beating Ohio State either. If both of those things come to fruition, it doesn't look good for Jim Harbaugh in my estimation. What about you?
No, listen, I've somewhat defended Harbaugh this year. I felt like he was going to get it done, but right now, 2 weeks into it doesn't look like he is. He's got a game, I think it's at Wisconsin in a couple of weeks. That is going to be the real test, Stephen A. If he can't get out of there, then the critics are going to rain down on him because after that, there's Notre Dame and obviously the end of the season game against Ohio State. My issue with him is his offensive philosophy. He brought in Josh Gaddis from Alabama. Nothing's different. It's the same Jim Harbaugh, 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. It's unimaginative. And, Army, is a good program. You know what I'm about to say. They took Oklahoma to overtime last year. It's hard to get up for them. It's hard to game plan against them. But that was still an embarrassment. They were just lucky to win the game. But I think some of those Michigan fans that you and I have been talking to for 2 or 3 years are starting to listen. They're getting frustrated. Could that dam break? Yes, you better believe it could.
Who's the sleeper for you in college football? Somebody that we should be paying attention to that is really flying under the radar?
Well, there was LSU, but they're no longer a sleeper. Stephen, it's hard to get beyond 5 or 6 or 7 teams and really come up with someone, because I think if you look at it realistically, move Clemson off the table and then take 2 of the next 3. What I mean by that is Georgia, Alabama, or LSU. I think 2 of those 3 will get in there. So what are you vying for now? You're vying essentially for one spot. Is it the Big Ten? Probably. Could Oklahoma be that school? Possibly. Beyond that, I don't really see anyone that's in that is next level. I think you have 6 or 7 teams in college football, and there is a precipitous drop-off. Now, Penn State is interesting. I might buy a coin or 2 on them just to break through, but beyond that, I'm struggling to find a sleeper. I don't think it's Auburn because the schedule is just too brutal.
Let's go back to Oklahoma because you mentioned them. Jalen Hurts has looked pretty damn good for them thus far. Have you been surprised by that at all?
I haven't, because I've known him as you have for a number of years, and he was really good 2 years ago, and we just forgot about him because he held the clipboard last year for Tua. But, he is a better passer. He's still not great. I'm still not sure he's going to knock people over in the NFL, although I might take a shot at him based on some of the garbage I see in the NFL on Sunday. But I think he's got a good complement around him. He's got the best offensive mind in the game as his head coach. And I listen, picking a Heisman on September 10th is hazardous, but I'll be very surprised. I'll be shocked if he's not a finalist for the Heisman in December.
I don't want to come across as sacrilegious, but I know that people say this about Lincoln Riley, people like you and I and what have you, because this is what we hear. Right. He's the best offensive mind in college football. But do folks in college football really feel that way about him? Do they feel that way about Lincoln Riley?
Yeah, I think, listen, people in the industry are always somewhat blind to what's going on in front of them. But I have to think they would be coming around to him. I mean, he had a big reputation as a coordinator, and I think the people at Oklahoma knew he was about to bolt. That's why Bob Stoops decided, you know what, I'm out of here. Let's turn the keys over to him. But I'm not sure he gets the credit that we give him. I think that's really a good point, a very salient point, Stephen A.
Well, for me personally, the reason I asked that question is because he did have Baker Mayfield one year.
Yeah.
Then he did have Kyler Murray the other. These are not exactly scrubs. As a matter of fact, they're both Heisman Trophy winners. Now, obviously, you got to give him credit where credit is due because he's the brains behind it all, and he has a lot to do with their development, not taking anything away from him. But those were some extraordinary talents at the quarterback position.
Well,
so I'm looking at that as being an assist to the coach.
The one thing I will say there, and that's a fair point, but the one commonality between Baker, Kyler, and obviously Jalen Hurts is they were cast aside by someone else. And they went to Oklahoma, and he played a big role in developing those two, and obviously now with Jalen Hurts. So I think that's really where he gets the most credit as someone who not only is a offensive-minded genius, I think, but someone who has been able to develop. Because just because you're a good offensive coach doesn't mean you develop quarterbacks. I think we gave Gus Malzahn at Auburn a lot of credit because he had Cam Newton. Well, guess what? He hasn't done a whole lot at the quarterback position since Cam Newton.
Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Before I get into the SEC, I want to ask you, the college football players, we've talked about this on and off on several occasions, and obviously that 4-game playoff situation in college football, a lot of people looked at it, liked it, others wish there were more teams or whatever. Where do you stand at this particular moment in time, having seen what you have seen the last 4 years? There's always a 5th or 6th team that's been on the outside outside looking in that we kind of figured or wished would have been thrown into the mix? Are you of that mindset that it's fine where it is, or does it need to be increased to 6 or an 8-team playoff situation?
I could go with either 6 or 8. I do not like where it is. And Stephen A., you know, I've spent most of my life in college football, and I'm deeply concerned about the sport of college football because I think you have a number of people who are making the key decisions who just simply aren't listening to fans. You and I, we talk to fans every day, and this sport is under pressure for a couple of reasons. Number one, the NFL has always been huge. But 3 or 4 years ago, college football was right behind the NFL. Now the NBA has become the superstar. And college football doesn't have an answer to that other than to say everything is fine. Well, everything is not fine. The playoffs have been relatively boring for the most part. The national semifinals, which should be tantamount to the college basketball Final Four, was a bust last year. You had a 27-point game with Notre Dame losing to Clemson. You had Alabama up by 4 touchdowns to Oklahoma. The game was closer at the end, but no one really thought they were going to lose. So, okay, you say by adding 2 or 4 more, is that going to change the dynamics? It may not change the final game, Clemson and Alabama every year, but it brings more people to the party, and that's what the sport needs. The NFL is great because you may be 8-8, but you got a shot at the wild card. In college football, if you're not at the elitist level, forget about it.
Paul Finebaum right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. The SEC, I watched LSU beat Texas. What did you peel from that game?
That's what we've been hearing from Baton Rouge, that this was a different operation, and it is. Joe Brady came over from the Saints. Now, okay, the Saints looked okay without Joe Brady last night. I think you would agree with me. But he brought some life to an offensive philosophy at LSU that was very stagnant, very predictable, and it's not predictable anymore. And in Joe Burrow, who was a transfer from Ohio State, they now have someone who can operate the system, and he operated it brilliantly Saturday night. They're a legitimate team. They've got a couple of tricky games that you may not be thinking about. And I mean, you look at Florida at home, but the following week they go to Mississippi State, a place they've lost the last couple of times there. We know about the Alabama game in early November, but you could argue if they only lose at Alabama, they may still have a shot. Now, by the way, they're not conceding anything. I mean, right now we haven't seen enough of Alabama to know what they have, but I think they can stay on the same field with Alabama.
So are we just assuming that Alabama and Georgia are the teams to beat in the SEC because they are who they are, or do they legitimately look considerably better than LSU or anybody else? They don't look considerably better right now, but the sample size with Alabama is terrible. We're talking about Duke and New Mexico State. I mean, those are just they would qualify for a Bum of the Month club if you're looking at a Friday night boxing match. I mean, as far as Georgia's played a little bit better opposition, but not much. But that's all going to change. And I hate to spend 6 months getting ready for the season, and now that we're in the season, say, hey, we got to wait for a game in a week or two. But Georgia plays Notre Dame next week, a week from Saturday. That will take care of some of that conversation. I don't know when Alabama's playing a decent game, Stephen A. This week they were supposed to have one on the road at South Carolina, but South Carolina has looked terrible. And in the first game against North Carolina, they're a 25-point favorite. We won't really. And then the next game for Alabama is at Texas A&M. I don't think we're going to know about Alabama until November. Who's the best quarterback in college football right now, in your estimation?
Woo, that's an interesting question, but I mean, I'm tempted to go.
Let me switch it this way.
Okay.
If you were an NFL team and you had the first overall pick, and any quarterback playing in college football right now was available for your draft, who would you take?
I would still go Trevor Lawrence, although I am going to tell you that what I've seen in 2 weeks of Justin Fields would have me looking very closely at him. Stephen A., he is so athletic. I was talking to Mike Tannenbaum earlier today, and he said he was at an Ohio State practice, and he said this guy just looks the part. I mean, physical. He says he's one of the fastest quarterbacks he's seen. So I need to see a little bit more because we saw nothing from him last year at Georgia. I'd still go with Trevor Lawrence. So I think he's a generational quarterback.
Paul Finebaum, the great one. Always appreciate you, buddy. Looking forward to talking to you soon. You take it easy.
Thank you, Stephen A.
All right. No problem. One and only Paul Finebaum, the mouth of the South, an expert on all things football as far as I'm concerned. The man knows the NFL and college football, by the way. And I love watching him on TV, too, and listening to him on the Paul Finebaum radio show. Make sure you do the same. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Back with your calls and more in a minute. By the way, when it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste. You need to get to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screening questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Discover why more than 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. That's Indeed.com/hire. I am ashamed. Understand, I'm in the media business. I've been a reporter for 25 years. I was a columnist for several years. I've been a sports commentator and a pundit since pretty much 1999, but for ESPN since 2003. I'm in the business of communicating. I'm in the business of talking to people, not just talking about them. Matter of fact, I've made a career of it. I don't care if I ever speak to Antonio Brown again in life. This kind of behavior on the part of him was so disgraceful, so embarrassing, so irresponsible, so selfish. It's hard for me to put into words. And from the principled position of knowing how to conduct yourself, we all make mistakes. Nobody's flawless. Nobody's perfect. But it's rare in a day where you see somebody intentionally engage in this level of insubordination, of distrust, and beyond. He has taped phone calls secretly. He has revealed private messages of teammates. He has stood up bosses. He's threatened bosses. He's done so many things that are nothing short of reprehensible and egregious. I don't understand how anybody can defend this. And as a black man, let me be very, very clear. While nobody should get away with it and most wouldn't, when it comes to you being black and in America, it's not just about doing twice as much to get half. It's also about paying twice the price for half the egregious behaviors of others. We don't get chances like others do. And so I look at it and I'm sitting there because you're going to have some ignorant fools out there that use words like sellout. Y'all can call up here today. Y'all thought I hung up on people in the past. Try me today.
The bigger question is, can Antonio Brown show up at meetings on time, pay attention, be a good Patriot?
If Antonio Brown falls in line for the Patriots, it will be the first time he's fallen in line.
Was he not going to complain if the Patriots win and he only has one or two catches?
I just have a great distaste for what I've witnessed with his selfishness and his immaturity, and a real distaste for the thought that a lot of what we saw was contrived or manipulated to arrive at this point.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Ain't it funny? Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. From the biggest concerts to games to the hottest theater shows and more, Vivid Seats has it all. Download the app and join the Vivid Seats Rewards loyalty program today. Also, ESPN Radio, the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, is presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works for you. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Let's get back to the phones. Thanks again to the great Paul Finebaum for coming on the show with us for a little bit. Let's get right to it. Let's go to Richard. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Richard? How are you?
I'm doing very well. First time caller. Thank you for having me on. Quickly, right, no I think AB is done with the NFL, even though he got a reprieve with the New England Patriots. I think it's just a matter of time. Stick a fork in him. He's done.
Well, what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, what I mean is, it's just like somebody slipping on a piece of ice, or either basically he's slipping on a banana peel. Sooner or later, he gonna slip up again. I don't have no confidence that he gonna, even though he on the best team in pro football. I think that sometime, somewhere along the way, he gonna slip up, and he has nowhere else to go.
Okay.
He's done.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. You think he's going to slip up? What do you think is going to happen to the New England Patriots?
They're going to keep on going down the road. They're going to keep on going down the road.
They're going to keep balling? They're going to keep balling?
They're going to keep rolling. No doubt about it. I don't see nobody in the AFC stopping them anytime soon. But one monkey ain't going to stop no show. And AB,
gotcha.
I think he ran out of time.
All right, well, let's come up with different analogies than monkeys, but I hear where you're coming from. Thank you for your call, man. I appreciate it. Let's go to Paul. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Paul?
Hey, Stephen A. Love the show. I'll get right to it.
Thank you.
With AB doing what he did by going to New England, would you be willing to say this is the weakest move in professional sports history, surpassing what KD did to Oklahoma City and going to Golden State?
No. I don't compare the two. Basketball is an entirely different sport, and the balance of power can dramatically shift. I mean, you watch New England and what they just did to Pittsburgh? AB wasn't on the field at that time. Did you watch New England in the Super Bowl this past year and in the playoffs against the Chargers and Kansas City leading into the Super Bowl victory over the Rams? They didn't have AB then. Did you watch New England and Tom Brady win 6 Super Bowls and go to 9 Super Bowls? Did you watch them lose to the Philadelphia Eagles with Tom Brady passing for over 500 yards at age 40? I did. So what they've been doing without AB. AB jumping on the bandwagon, you can call it whatever you want, but football is far more physical, far more violent, and far less dependent on the exploits of one individual's heroics like basketball is. So I don't compare the two.
Oh, thank you.
Have a nice day. Robert, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A., thank you for having me on your show, buddy. I love your show, man. I love you, but I'm not in love with you, but I love your show.
I don't want no man in love with me personally, but go ahead.
I feel you.
That's just my preference. Go ahead.
I got it. Me too. I want to talk about Dak Prescott real quick. If I was Jerry Jones, I would not give Dak Prescott. I'm a big time Dallas Cowboy fan, but I would not give Dak Prescott this contract until after week 4. If he can prove to me that he can either go 3-1 or 4-1, 4-0 after they play the Saints, then yes, give him that contract. If he loses one of those games between Miami and the Redskins before they play the Saints, and then come back and beat the Saints, yes, I will give him that contract. But I'll wait till after week before I give him that contract.
Let me tell you something right now. I think you should be ashamed of yourself for taking that position. And I'm going to tell you why I think you should be ashamed of yourself. Whatever happened to work already done? The guy has started every game for his first 3 years in the NFL after being a 4th-round pick. He was under immense pressure to succeed Tony Romo. He did it. He was under immense pressure because the Dallas Cowboys were perpetually outside of the playoffs looking in. He got them to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. Ezekiel Elliott was also a rushing champion. I get that. But Dak Prescott was no scrub. Dak Prescott made good plays. Dak Prescott kept them in games as well. Not to mention the fact that he's been a quintessential leader. He's been a model citizen. He's been absolutely positively dependable. He's been a role model. This guy doesn't get suspended. He hasn't done anything wrong. And I'm not saying that he should be the highest paid quarterback in football, but should he be paid in the ballpark of a Carson Wentz? You're damn right he should. He's a starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and they're winning more than they lose. He's like 32-18, 33-18 as a starting quarterback, man. Why should he have to do something else to get a deal? Kirk Cousins already getting $28 million a year. Matthew Stafford's at $27.5 a year. Matt Ryan's at $30 million per year. Kirk Cousins never played in a Carson Wentz rather never even played in the playoffs. Got $107 million guaranteed. Jared Goff, he got to the Super Bowl this year, courtesy of Todd Gurley, Aaron Donald, and Sean McVay. But guess what? He got $100+ million. How come Dak Prescott can't get his? Why not?
I understand that, but Prescott now has the weapons that Jared Goff had.
Don't give me
last
that.
year.
Don't give me that now. No. Don't give me that now. Anything that he's asking for is based on what he has done. You can't refute what he's done. So why deny it to him when other people who've done the same or less have been taken care of? Now, if they hadn't been taken care of, I get your point. But if they've been taken care of, and this is the market for a quarterback, why can't Dak Prescott get his?
I understand 100% what you're saying. Only thing I'm saying is that, yes, he led them to the playoffs. He won a division. But when he went up against Detroit Lions, yes, he won that game. But when he went up against an elite team like the Rams, they couldn't pull it through. Now, these three games, the first three games, these are games that
be quiet. Listen and be quiet. Are you saying, if you're saying he doesn't deserve as much as Jared Goff, okay. If you're saying that he doesn't deserve to be the highest paid quarterback, okay. But when Kirk Cousins is making $28 million, Matthew Stafford is making $28 million, Matt Ryan is making $30 million, Carson Wentz is guaranteed $107 million, what's wrong with Dak Prescott getting $107 million? That's what the going rate is for dudes who haven't produced.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that he wants to be the highest paid quarterback.
Goodbye. Have a nice day. Good. Jay, you're live with Stephen A. I don't have time.
Hey, what's going on, big guy? Hey, one,
I agree with you.
What?
Come on now.
I just want to ask you about my team down here, the Carolina Panthers, and Cam Newton. I'm looking at it as, I know Ron Rivera's on his hot seat, but do you think Cam needs, I know he got North Turner, do you think he needs North Turner need to be actually the head coach to get this thing going in the right direction? And I want to say this to everybody in America.
No, I don't. No, I don't. You know why? Hold it. You know why? I say no? Because North Turner had his shot as a head coach when he was in San Diego.
Yeah, but he didn't have a Cam.
North Turner wasn't considered. North Turner was not considered a great head coach. He has always been considered an astute offensive coordinator. He has never been considered a great head coach. And I don't believe if you're going to replace Ron Rivera, it should be with North Turner.
Say this to all America. Anyone who calls in and says that you're a sellout, they don't know their own black history. It took men like you, honestly, Stephen A., to get us out of the situation we were in for 400 years. And I really appreciate you, big guy.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Comment means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Jeff, you live with Stephen A. What's going on, Jeff?
Hey, Stephen A. How are you doing? First time caller, my man.
Thank you so much. How you doing, man? What's going on?
Doing good. Hey, real quick, because I obviously I've been listening to a couple things. So I got a few comments, obviously. Number one, hard for me to agree with Paul Finebaum, but I am agreeing. I grown up Michigan, grew up in Detroit, love Michigan football, but I'm having a hard time with what they're doing there on offense. You know, honestly, I'm going to say this. Tyrone Wheatley left. I think he was the best recruiter Michigan had. When's the last time we had a 5-star running back at that school? Last time, okay? We finally got some speed out in the end. I think our linemen, although their body shapes have changed, man, did they look slow against those small, fast Army guys. So when's the last time we recruited the offensive lineman in the 4- or 5-star category outside of Ruiz, who, by the way, is doing a good job, even though, you know, Braylon Edwards had nothing but negative things to say about him. Love Don Brown and the speed he gets on defense, so, you know, love all that. But, man, I got to be honest, I think Paul Finebaum is finally, I agree with him that, you know what, if Harbaugh can't do it this year, man, we got to look at something else. Somebody that is more 21st century, and I hate to say it, I'm not a fan of the RPO offense, but daggone it, the RPO offense works, really works,
I will tell you this.
And we need to get on board.
Listen, it's not that complicated. At the end of the day, Mr. Harbaugh, Coach Harbaugh, you got to beat Ohio State if you don't make it to the postseason. It's one or the other. College football playoffs or beat Ohio State. You can't take an L on both attempts and be considered that dude. Period. Have a nice day. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Back with your calls to close out the show in a minute. Stable 360 Protection, America's #1 ethanol treater, Narciso. He got consent from John Gruden. Listen to Alejandro talking to Dan Lebertard.
The way that happened was I was shooting him all day, just documenting everything, because eventually, it'd be cool to use it in like a longer form piece. And he was talking to Drew Rosenhaus.
Apparently, according to Alejandro,
like we can get consent that way. So my whole thing the entire time when we were waiting for Gruden's response was that Gruden's going to be like, listen, AB, I love you, man, but, that's disrespectful. I can't be having you
Gruden gave permission?
I can't be having you post, like, our own conversations, which is the response that I think anyone would think was going to happen. And then he responds like 15 minutes later, 3 texts. He goes, wow, I love it. Loved it. I love it. And I was like, what?
What? What?
And then we were like, all right, there's our consent. Like, keep the text message.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
if you missed any of today's show, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by the Capital One Quicksilver Card. Earning unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere. Hey, what's in your wallet? To the phones we go before we get on out of here for the day. Make your points quick and succinct, or I will make you. Let's go to Jeremy. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, Stephen A., man, I love the show, man. First off, I'm a soldier. I'm in the Army. I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan.
All right.
My question for you is...
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, man. My question is, who do we hold accountable for this Week 1 loss? When we have all this talent, surrounding Matt Ryan. The defense is healthy. We went out and drafted 2 offensive linemen, and we also got 2 free agents.
I will say this here. We don't, my brother, we don't need it. We don't need a history lesson. Here's the deal. You have a new offensive coordinator. Steve Sarkisian is gone. But the bottom line is this. Is Matt Ryan there? He's been a veteran quarterback in this league for quite some time. Yes. Devontae Freeman back? Yes. Julio Jones there? Yes. Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley? Yes. There is no excuse. Now, if you lost 38-35 or 42-38 or something like that, that would be different. There is no excuse for this Atlanta Falcons offense to be held to 12 points. Period. No excuse. Thanks a lot, man. Let's go. Let's go to Gus. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Gus?
Stephen A., big bro. Appreciate you. Listen, I've been listening to your commentary about AB the past couple of days, and I agree with 99% of what you're saying about him. But there was one thing you said on First Take. It was either yesterday or today. I can't remember. And I'm sure you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you might have a little bit of a soft spot for him in this sense. You said you didn't want to characterize him as the person that he's showing himself to be as of late. And my question for you, I guess, is that's the part I disagree with. Like, at what point do we say, no, this is really who you are? If you look at the behavior that he's exemplified in Pittsburgh, obviously what he's been doing as of late with the Oakland Raiders, now it's to the Patriots.
No, I am going to correct you. The fact of the matter is, we don't know all the stuff in Pittsburgh. They do, but I don't. What I do know is when he did the social media video of Tomlin, when Tomlin was saying stay off social media, he wasn't listening, nor did he hear Tomlin at the time because he was preoccupied with his own foolishness. That was a mistake. Last year, he was AWOL on the team. He quit on the team the last game of the regular season. He denied it, but they said he did. Really, where stuff hit the fan was then. Prior to that, anything was an internal matter even some of his teammates were not aware of. Where it really hit the fan was last year, the last game of the season, and his antics over the last 2 months. So what I'm saying to you is that I can sit up there and excoriate you for what you show me to be. But to characterize that as who you are, I don't think that 2 months does that. 2 years might, 4 years might, 10 years might, but over the last couple of months or so, no, I don't think so, which is why it's safe for me. Now, if Ryan Clark or somebody did that, former teammates, present teammates, etc., they've got inside knowledge I don't have. But from this bird's eye view, I'm just not going to do that.
I got you. Can I make one last point?
Hurry up. Go ahead.
Got you. So I was watching the video of him, on YouTube saying he's free. Can I just say nationally that I'm sick and tired of these athletes likening themselves to slaves? I mean, I know there's a lot of unfairness that goes on in these various leagues, but I just feel like our ancestors will be rolling over in their graves the way these guys try to act like they're fake activists and just acting like they're the most.
Gus. Hey, Gus. I 1,000% agree with you. You're absolutely right, bro. You're absolutely right. That just because you're getting paid money may not necessarily mean that you're not subjected to certain things as human beings that you may like reminding you of your subordinacy and things of that nature. But you are absolutely right. Considering what our ancestors had to go through and what they had to endure, for these guys to walk around acting like they're being enslaved while pocketing millions upon millions of dollars is disgraceful. Gus, you get no argument from me, bro. You're 1,000% right, and I 1,000% agree with you. Period. I got to get on out of here. I'll holler at y'all in 22 hours. Until then, Stephen A. Smith signing off. Peace and love.